Hi, this is Dr. Cooper, and this is a lesson. I had to change this lesson because some of the information in the old lesson was incorrect. So this is the final paper construction lesson. So we basically have 2.5 weeks to get our final papers completed. So let's go ahead and talk about this paper. Okay, so we know that we are writing either a position paper or a proposal paper, and you've already chosen this early on in the process, but you can always change which type of paper you're going to write. However, I don't recommend changing at this stage of the game. Basically, what you're going to do is combine papers 2, 3, and 4 into one paper, and you need to have anywhere between 8 to 10 pages. Anything short of 8 to 10 pages is going to be marked off 10% for each page it is short. So if you're good with math, you will know that if you turn in a paper that's only 7 pages, then that's 10% off. The best you could get is a 90%. Okay, so make sure that you are writing enough. Also, the outline, the cover page, the works cited or references pages doesn't count with this page count of 8 to 10. The 8 to 10 is the paper itself, nothing else. Sources. Sources are going to be important in this paper because we've spent all semester searching for sources. So the requirements for your paper is a minimum of 6 sources. However, that is very light. I'm thinking probably want to use anywhere from 8 to 10, but 6 is the minimum. So you have to have at least 6, and you need to have a variety of sources from the Odyssey assignments that we did. If you remember, those assignments were the book assignment, periodical article, scholarly journal article, the reference sources, and the primary research assignment. So your paper is required that you have at least one book, one periodical article, one scholarly journal article, one reference source, and a little bit of primary research in there. If any of the sources that you located during this whole research process are not applicable at this point, then you need to go out and find a source to replace those ones that didn't work for you. As far as web pages, there are no requirements to use web pages. As we have learned throughout the semester, web sources aren't the best sources to use. You are permitted to use them, but you need to make sure that the total of web sources used are 1/3 or less. So if you have only 6 sources total for your paper, only 2 of those sources can be web pages. Now keep that in mind that when I say web sources, I'm talking about web pages. I'm not talking about using the databases because that's different than the web. Okay, so if you're still unclear about that, you might want to clarify before the paper is due. Okay, we also need to pay attention to documentation style. We learned both APA and MLA throughout the semester. First half of the semester was MLA and the second half was APA. One of the things that I see when students turn in their final paper is that they haven't bothered to pick one style. Half of their paper will be in MLA and the other half is APA. That is not acceptable. You're going to lose major points if you don't go back through your paper and choose which style. Now, because this is an English class, technically all papers should be MLA because English falls underneath the Modern Language Association. But I like for you to choose based on the topic of your paper. So as you learned when we talked about MLA and APA, if your paper has more of a science feel or a educational, topic going on, those are APA style topics. So choose accordingly, or you can choose based on which one you like better. But the key thing is that you choose one and you are consistent throughout the paper. Okay, also be aware that you are required to use parenthetical notation, in-text citation, just like we did in the earlier papers, and no footnotes or endnotes. Okay, so parenthetical notation, where you put in parentheses author's last name, year, page number if you're doing APA, or its author and page number if you're using MLA. Okay, moving on to cover or not to cover. Okay, so as you learn when we talked about MLA and APA, cover page is required for an APA style of paper. So if you are using APA style, I will expect to see a cover page. If you're using MLA style, then I do not want to see a cover page. Your first page will be the first page of your paper with the standard heading on the upper left corner of your paper. Okay, keep in mind the correct page numbering system for both styles, but you don't need a cover page for MLA. You do need a cover page for APA. Also keep in mind that it will be a works cited page for MLA, but a references page for APA. And you have to list all the sources used in the paper, not the complete works cited that you've been giving to me all semester. Also, you want to make sure that you pay close attention to this final version, because I wasn't being very nitpicky as you were going through the process. I was just doing a glance through to make sure you had the general idea of APA and MLA style for your works cited working bibliography. But for the last paper, I'm going to look a little more closely. So you want to make sure that everything is correct. Now, do not include a working bibliography or an annotated bibliography. That is not what's required for this assignment. Okay? All right, don't forget your outline. Okay, your outline is not only required, but it's also recommended because it's great for organization and it helps you make sure that you have all of the key elements for both the position and the proposal paper in there. Now, one of the biggest things that I'll see with the outlines is that students haven't expanded the outline beyond when you turned it in 16 weeks ago. Well, it hasn't been that long, but 12 weeks ago. You need to match, your outline needs to match your final paper. So now that you have 8 to 10 pages, you want to make sure that everything is reflected in the outline as well. This is worth 10% of your final grade. So you want to make sure that you have done a good job of updating the outline. Okay? And then the last thing we want to remind you of for next week is your final research prospectus journal. It's not really a journal, but it's just a prospectus like you have been doing. You're going to email it. And this final one will have a research question and a 300-word abstract of your final paper. Okay? So an abstract is just a brief summary of your research paper, or thesis, or whatever it is that you're writing, and it's any in-depth analysis of a particular subject or discipline. So just the topic that you've chosen is just a short in-depth analysis of a paragraph or so. I would say a paragraph anywhere from 8 to 10 sentences. Okay, it's used to help a reader quickly ascertain the paper's purpose. So think of it as if someone were about to read your paper, they could read your abstract to get a good idea of what your paper is about. Now, for the APA style, an abstract is actually required for all research papers. But in this class, the requirement is for both MLA and APA, and you will not submit it with the paper. You're going to submit it as your research prospectus and email it to me like you have been doing all semester. Okay? So that's, I like to call this easy 20 points here for this research prospectus. And basically after you finish writing your paper, it should be easy to write a abstract or summary of that paper. Okay, so that will be due on the Friday after the paper is due. I just wanted to give you a heads up that that's part of it, because some of you will be doing your APA and you'll say, hey, do I need to have an abstract? So I wanted to remind you today during this lesson that you will do an abstract, but it will be separate from the final paper. It will be your final research prospectus. Okay, so those are just the main elements of your final research paper, and I will give you more insight on it later, or not later, but next week when we start talking about writing the final paper. But until then, go ahead and get started putting it all together.